This video is for demonstrating DHIS2 install using automated Ansible tools. The tools are hosted on GitHub. They are open source. You can just go through them. Let's just do that already. They are on the GitHub repository is named DHIS2 server tools. Just put GitHub, just narrow down our search, and you can see these tools are here. They are Ansible based, and they automate setting up DHIS2 in two environments mainly. One is single server installation, and that by default uses LXD containers. Set up in a distributed environment where you have physical or virtual servers accessible via the network. Ansible again has ability to connect to these servers via SSH and run deployment. That is another video on its own. We're going to cover that, and I'm going to just demonstrate in detail how you can sort of deploy Ansible from deploy DHIS2 on a distributed server kind of environment. Okay, but today it's a single server install, and before you start, you're going to need a Linux server with at least 4 GB of RAM and 2 CPU cores, and it needs to be running supported Ubuntu, long-term supported Ubuntu headless server operating system. It can be 2204 or 2404 at the time of this recording, but that is subject to change. As time goes by, Ubuntu drop support for the older LTS releases, and the new releases, are supported. You need to have SSH access to the server, and you need to have a non-root user with sudo privileges. So I'm going to head to the terminal and confirm that we have these prerequisites before we start. Okay, the terminal, I have a server that is running in Linode cloud. Going to SSH to the server, and indeed we are able to connect to the server, meaning our SSH access works. And as you can see here, the user that is logged in is KTito, right? Let me just select that. The user that is logged in is KTito, and this user is not root user. So all those kind of requirements are met. I can confirm also. It's not a root user. Okay, I can also confirm as well by just with a few commands. Who is logged in? It's KTito, and KTito is not root. Okay, number two, groups that KTito is member of. You see, sorry, wait. Okay, so I can confirm with, who is logged in. It's KTito indeed. And what are the groups that KTito is a member of? Groups, groups. See, KTito is a member of KTito group, sudo group, and LXD group. So yeah, so that is also met. Step number two is that you need to enable the firewall, right? It's a security requirement that your server is not just opening all the unnecessary, it's just like, just restrict access and open only the ports that you need open. So right now we need port 22 or SSH port, speaking in general terms, because SSH can be using or listening on non-default port. For us, we're just keeping things simple. We are listening on port 22. So I'm going to just enable port 22 access on the firewall level with sudo ufw limit 22 TCP. You ask why I'm using limit is because of the those are security feature that you limit access on port 22. What does limit do? It restricts and controls failed login attempts, in the sense that if you try logging into this server, it checks your IP address access, and then it logs failed attempts. And after, I think, 6 attempts, the server bans you for a while, right? You'd not be able to log into that. You bans that IP address for a while, and then it restores back your access after some time. So that, in the sense, restricts, or rather restricts or rather brute force attacks. Bots in the internet tries different combination of username and passwords to try accessing your server, and after some number of failed login attempts, that bot's IP address is sort of blocked. And then, yeah, so after that, we have limited access on port 22, and we can now enable the firewall, the sudo fw enable. Okay, and indeed the firewall is now enabled. You can confirm with sudo fw status. Okay, you see the firewall is enabled and it's only allowing access on limited access on port 22. Thank you. Next step is to download the deployment tools. I'm just gonna copy that. Git, just paste. Git clone, HTTPS, and you're just gonna get that. And next step is to create an inventory host file. Step number 3. Why do you need to create an inventory host file? Reason number 1 is that Ansible automation tool does things against servers listed in an inventory file. It can be one server or multiple servers. Yeah. So the design principle of Ansible is that it's doing things against servers defined in an inventory host file. That is why we need an inventory host here. And number 2, this inventory hosts file also has, it has variables that our deployment tools is using, like DHIS2 version, for example, and so forth. So we want to one of the prerequisites is that you should have this inventory host file, and we are shipping a template where you can use to create. You can start from, so to speak. So let's go back to the terminal and go to the directory that we just downloaded, DHIS2 server tools deploy. You need to go to deploy, or rather cd into deploy directory, because that is where you're gonna run your deployment. Okay, copy inventory host template inventory hosts. Why we ship, we are not like committing inventory hosts and we're just committing the template, is that we this inventory host file, as you can see, just demonstrate as I'm explaining, that is that it not only has the list of hosts, but also variables, right? And these variables are not the same, for different deployments. Fully qualified domain name for my deployment is separate, different from a fully qualified domain name, in another deployment scenario. Even my time zone is Africa, Nairobi. Your time zone can be different, and so forth and so forth. As you can see, my DHIS instance is going to be installing 242, but next year or 2 years from now, maybe 243 is going to be released. So, and I want to just keep my 242 around. So that means I need to have my inventory host file intact, not rewritten by the Git pull or something, right? Yeah, so that's the reason. Okay, we've created an inventory host. Step number 4 is just to run, the set fully qualified domain name. But in this deployment, we assume you don't have fully qualified domain name. Perhaps you just have a Linux server or Amazon AWS or wherever you have your server. You've not yet configured you fully qualified domain name for your server. So we just want to get DHIS2 up and running as quickly as possible. We're going to have a separate video that deals with the domain, area codes, buying the domain from the registrar, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so right now I'm gonna skip to step 5, which is just the install. Okay, I'm gonna do that and in a split windows. Okay, so the step number 5 is just to run deploy.sh. We are already in deploy directory, as you can see, with pwd. So I'm going to just run sudo deploy.sh. This is the reason why we asked you to have an root user with sudo privileges, because essentially what this does is that it just got on this other splitted window DHIS2 server tools deploy is that deploy.sh script installs Ansible, and it also checks UFW status, and then the whole script fails if you've not enabled your firewall. It copies and creates inventory hosts file from the template, and it installs Ansible on the specific operating system that you're going to be running, and other things that needs sudo rights to in order to be executed, like updating, upgrading, installing Git, installing software properties commons, and even the Ansible itself needs to be installed with apt. You need to be elevated for you to be able to do that. That's why you need a non-root user with sudo privileges. After that, what happens is that after Ansible is installed, the very, very last things is that the playbook is run, Ansible playbook DHIS2 YAML. Ansible with Ansible you run that playbook, and you can see on my left now things are happening on the local, the host, the hypervisor where we're going to be running our deployment. It's installing, ensuring the firewall is set properly, setting up the forward policy, adding rules for the LXD bridge, configuring NAT to our proxy container, because you noticed we didn't open port 80 and 443 on the firewall, but eventually all the requests to 80 and 443 are going to be forwarded to the proxy container, and that is what this line was doing. It's going to also now include tasks related to PostgreSQL configuration, like creating PostgreSQL container, installing PostgreSQL version 16 as it is defined in our inventory host file. Inventory hosts, you see down here that we have PostgreSQL version defined 16. So it's going to install that, and it's going to, how is it going to do that? It's adding um, PostgreSQL apt repository from official PostgreSQL and installing the exact version that you want, and it's adding the signing key and so forth and so forth, and installing the version 16 that you want. After that, of course there are other things that happens, like setting the time zone, configuring PostgreSQL custom configuration. We're going to have a fashion, a video dedicated to that. Ensuring that PostgreSQL is running, opening all, PostgreSQL listening on all the ports. And if I go back to this other window and perhaps run LXC list, you'll see that right now we have two containers created. One is PostgreSQL that was created first, and the second is proxy, which is currently being, it was created here, and stuff is just happening inside that proxy container. So it's because our deployment approach is on a single server and we are using LST containers by default. It's a nice way of separating DHIS2 pieces, required stack like proxy, the Tomcat, PostgreSQL. Just want to have them separated. Good for security. It's a cleaner deployment approach, and also, yeah, there's many other advantages that you get with running things from within containers that deserves its own separate video. So right now it's creating proxy, installing Nginx, because the default proxy that you get installed is Nginx. Okay, you check with Vim inventory host, and you notice that you go to the proxy down here, the proxy that is set by default is Nginx. If you want Apache 2, perhaps that's your preference. You have two options right now supported. You have Nginx and Apache 2. Just come and add Apache 2 there. So we're just gonna leave it the way it is, and it's going to install Nginx in our in our proxy container. If I execute lxc exec into Postgres and run born again shell, you'll see that right now we have PostgreSQL running and listening on port 5432. That's what I was explaining before. And if I exit now and execute into the proxy, okay, you'll see that right now we have something listening on port 80. Not yet. Maybe it's not yet completed, in the next and enabled it. But you see, after a while, once everything is completed, you will see that something here is listening on port 80. Okay, because right now I don't think there is any configuration. It's Nginx, Nginx yet cd conf d conf d. It's nothing, it's empty yet. We have upstream configuration, but there's no main configuration created yet. After a while, it's going to be created after the instance is created. Right now on my on the left side, monitoring container is being created and installing the default monitoring tool. So as you can see, LXC list now includes an additional monitor container and DHIS, and monitor container is going to be running Munin. Why? Because in your inventory host file, if you didn't change anything, the default monitoring server monitoring tool, next, okay, previous server, next is Munin. Okay, that is going to be the server monitoring tool installed. Right now it's creating DHIS user on my left. That's, I was not able to explain that, but it connected to the DHIS, the PostgreSQL database, and created DHIS user and also DHIS database, created PGTRM extension and the other extensions that like PostGIS that are required for DHIS2 to run. Okay, yeah, so right now it's creating an instance, doing things relating to create instance, like connection to the database, installing Java, and Tomcat and so forth. So for 242, for example, because that is what Vim inventory hosts, that is what's the version that we are installing here. Going to the line with DHIS, you see that the version that we're installing is actually indeed 242. You need Tomcat 10. And for you to be able to install Tomcat 10 with apt, you need Ubuntu 24.04 server. And you also need Java 17. We didn't specify all those parameters, but Ansible, these tools are intelligent enough to know that for 242 you're gonna need 24.04. If I execute into the DHIS container and run lsb release minus plus lsb release, minus F, you'll see that we are running indeed 2404. That was dynamically determined. Even Java version, you see the Java is 17, and you can verify the version of Tomcat that we have with just checking the directories. It's a default default Tomcat something Vim, for example. Uh, mm, Tomcat 10 default. Maybe it's not yet even installed, but it will install Tomcat 10 finally. Okay, we're gonna verify that after. So after that, setting up other things related to Apache. It's going back to configuring um, Moonin, Apache 2, proxy nginx, and so forth. It's completed right now. So if you go into the DHIS, you'll see there's going to be a file in its default that has the version Tomcat, for example. Tomcat 10 it's indeed Tomcat 10 that is installed. Okay, and if you go to the proxy, you'll see that there is a port listening on port 80 and 443. We were not able to see that before, but right now we have configuration ready, and if you run ss-nlp, you'll see indeed we have something listening on port 80 and 443, and it's nginx. But now verifying our install, you can go to the browser and put the IP address, because we don't have fully qualified domain name set. We're just going to be accessing this with plain IP address. Okay, let me just open incognito window just to uh, 172.104.21. You see, first of all, it's bringing this error that the connection is not private. It's because our browser is not able to trust our self-signed certificate. That's why it's not able to, it's giving us this warning that the certificate is not trusted. Of course, it's a self-signed certificate generated on the server side, and our browser have no any information about that. Of course, you can add that public key to your trust list. That's another story. Um, right now, our server is not trusting that certificate, but you can proceed and log in to the unsafe site. And indeed, it's bringing us access to the DHIS2 app, and the user by default is DHIS, sorry, admin, and password is district. Okay, and you can verify that the version of DHIS that is configured right now is 242. You see, and on top of that, there is a glowroot APM. You can access that with the same IP, but DHIS dash the the pub folder is DHIS dash glowroot. It will ask again for the default login and password. We've configured it to be admin district. Okay, and after that, this is now profiling our Tomcat environment, our DHIS2 instance. Okay, our DHIS2 application. On top of that, we have our default server monitoring also configured, and it's accessible on the same IP address 172, but the path for that is Moonin. Okay, and as you can see, indeed, it's using basic authentication admin district. Okay, and you can see for sure that we have things monitored on this endpoint. Okay, what is the other thing that I wanted to mention? I wanted to mention the rewrite. It's very important, but maybe you can dedicate another video for that. Let's just stop there. You've seen that we have 3 apps deployed: Moonin, glowroot, and the DHIS2 instance. Yeah. Okay.